All right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to another future focused weekly update where we are bridging the gap of business technology and the human experience with the stated goal of keeping you 10 steps ahead. So, hopefully, listening to this is helping you accomplish that. If it's not, let me know and then I'll tweak it and make it better. But hopefully, it is. If you find value in this, please share it with someone, like, comment, do all those good things, help other people find it. I do this for your benefit, not my own. So it just helps if other people know about it. And yeah, it's been another crazy week. For those of you who are just starting to listen to my stuff, you know that I lost my full-time job and then had baby number 8. So it's been a whirlwind, kind of picking my head up out of water and getting things moving again. So it's been a good couple weeks here the past few weeks. Well, actually, the whole thing has been. But I want to jump right into it. Last week, if you didn't catch it, I talked in depth about my response to Yuval Noah Harari's conversation with Stephen Bartlett. Thought they hit on some really heavy stuff that I wanted to unpack, share some of my reflections. But this is back to the usual cadence of 5-ish updates that I think are super relevant, super interesting, came across my desk either by someone else or that I just encountered that I want to talk through. So I've got 5. And I'm going to try and get to all 5, I guess, unless I get distracted or go too far on one. But I'll try and be tight on this. So let's start first. If you have not heard, OpenAI had a project that was codenamed Strawberry. And it's been something that people have been talking about for a while. It was supposed to be the next generation of their AI model. It was supposed to have all sorts of things. And Strawberry is now here. It's no longer called Strawberry. It's called, I think, O1. Or it's O1, lowercase O1. And if you are a Plus user, you can now see it as a selection in there. There's been a lot of talk about it. I'm going to focus on one area in particular, but just hitting on it on a high level. Some of the reasons it's been capturing attention is there's rumors that the cost of OpenAI's, ChatGPT is going to go up to like $2K. Whether that's a month or year seems still be super unclear. But if you listen to 2 weeks ago, I talked about how Canva is increasing their prices by 400%. So this cost of AI is starting to make its way into, users. Now, that's not why I'm talking about it, because as it stands today, my premium subscription doesn't cost anymore. I haven't seen that. I haven't gotten a warning saying, by the way, hey, instead of $20, we're going to charge you $2,000. So if you are a Plus user, at least of OpenAI, don't freak out about the price hike yet, but it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Now, I've toyed around with O1, Omni 1, Strawberry, whatever. And, the big thing they're touting about it is that it's supposed to be a new and innovative way for the way it generates its responses to spend more time thinking about its response. So instead of just, again, it's trying to kind of mimic human behavior where you try and get people to not just say the first thing that pops into their head when they are asked a question, like to think through their line of reasoning, think through their logic, and give a thoughtful response. In very much ways, that's what they're trying to do with this, is say, we're trying to change the way large language models and these GPTs are generating their responses to be more thoughtful, to put more time into its line of reasonings, hopefully with the intention of catching errors, catching mistakes, and reducing, I don't like the word hallucinations, but false positive responses, things like that. That's what it's designed to do. Supposed to be innovative, groundbreaking, all of this stuff. I think for the everyday user, I will tell you, if you've toyed around with it, I don't know that you're necessarily going to go, wow, this was wildly different. Now, I think in certain areas, like if you're using LLMs for coding assistance, for math assistance, for certain things like that, you might see some of this stuff and really notice a difference. I personally, in what I've toyed around with it with, was like, well, I don't even really like using it because I can't upload attachments or do anything. It is significantly limited in the way I can work with it. So for me, I haven't been terribly impressed with it, just for practical reasons. Now, what I want to talk about is some of the hype around this advanced analytical thinking that it does and why we need to be really, really, really careful with this. So that's where I'm going to spend my time focused. But if you're an end user and you toy with it, feel free to send me a note, send me an email, message me, whatever. I'd be curious your experience if you are using it. for some of these more advanced analytical things that it has historically not been super great with. If you're noticing a difference, I personally, for how I use it, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a coder, I'm not. So for that stuff, I think it's more of a pain in the rear. But anyway, so here's my concern, and here's why I'm talking about it. Is the marketing, the hype, the push around this is a major groundbreaking advancement in large language models. It's going to drastically reduce hallucinations. It's going to dramatically improve the accuracy of what it comes out with. All this really, really, really good stuff that sounds great. And it's something that I think we all desire. There's nothing worse, especially with the rise in misinformation and just malfunctions that people are taking as truth. Obviously, yeah, we want to fix that. However, as I've played with it myself and researched it more, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about it because is it getting better at explaining its line of thought? Yes. In experimenting with it, I would say it does a good job explaining in more comprehensive ways how it came to the conclusions it did and where it got that information and all this other stuff. And it does it in a very convincing manner. And if you don't get what you want, you can ask for more details and it will be, robust in that. Initially with that though, even that, okay? Even that to me is a little bit concerning. And hear me out why. We've already seen from the rise of misinformation and social media hype that people don't really read the fine print. They're not really interested in reading the line of reasoning. They want the headline. And so somebody sees a headline that says something super inflammatory and tells 0.01% of the truth. Nobody reads any further and goes, well, wait a minute, is that even actually correct? So even just surface level observing human behavior and our natural tendencies, the fact that OpenAI is giving more comprehensive responses and going, here's the answer, here's, why I think that's the answer, here's where that's coming from. I don't know that that's necessarily, for the vast majority of people, going to influence how they respond to the answers that they get from ChatGPT. Now, you may say, well, but who really cares so long as it's more accurate and it's more advanced in its thinking and it's coming to these conclusions with logical thinking. Here's the problem, though. As I've looked into even my own experimentation with it, as I've read other things about it, people who have tested it even more lengthy than I have, the thing is, it's not necessarily more accurate. It is much more convincing in how it presents its argument, in it presenting its answer. It will give a very convincing, lengthy, here is exactly why this is the right answer. But the answers aren't necessarily better. And that to me is the concerning part. Is we already have people who by default naturally are responding to the headline, never reading below. Then you've got another category of people who might read the headline, already have a preconceived personal bias towards this. And once they see, hey, there's reasonable reasons to believe this now, I'm even more convinced. Like, I'm not necessarily going to challenge my own personal biases and assumptions about this. Now I just feel even better about my personal biases because OpenAI gave me a very lengthy, seemingly robust line of thinking for how it came to the conclusion. So I don't need to think anymore. Why even bother thinking? AI is thinking for me. And this is a risk I have raised for ever since OpenAI has come out with its ChatGPT, that this is a serious risk. People don't really like to think critically. We prefer to just have our thinking done for us. And we don't like to think we do, but it's a heck of a lot easier to just be told what to think. And so now it's very convincing it. Now, here's where it just gets worse, okay? Is that right, they're running these analysis on it to see how, hey, detect your own deception. Like, when are you doing this? Because it's still answering with 100% confidence, even when its line of thinking shows it's not confident. So its purported response is extremely confident, but then as you actually read through its reasoning, you're like, you aren't even terribly convinced of your own line of reasoning, and you acknowledge that in your reasoning, yet your answer is extremely confident, which is extremely deceptive to people. It's extremely deceptive to people. If you answer something with extreme confidence, even if you're uncertain, it is more convincing to people than if you're like, well, this is the best I've come to. I'm not 100%. So again, we have another layer of influence that it has. And then they did some tests on this to see, hey, like, do your own analysis, self-reported, of where your answers were incorrect or potentially you were deceptive in your response based on your reasoning. And it only self-reported less than 1% as anything it did. So it's not right. It's like if you asked, hey, take a look in the mirror, how good do you think you are? And the average person says, I'm way better than they really are. And it's not doing a great job of self-reporting here. So it explains its line of thought, but then I was even toying around with this and asking for details on how it came to the conclusion it did. And it gave me very robust reasons and very lengthy answers with perspective, potential links to things and sources that it's pulling from. But when I actually dug into it, a lot of the links were completely bogus. The things it was referencing and saying, well, according to this, when I actually looked into it, I was like, that's not even right. That's not even something that was said. Like, it was completely fabricated. So it shows that it's actually intentionally making up reasons for its behavior, which ironically is very similar to human behavior. So it's trained on human behavior. Should we really be surprised that it's behaving that way? So why do I share all this? I share all this not to necessarily throw shade on OpenAI's Omni 1 model. I think it's extremely powerful. I look at the technology we have. It is incredible what we're able to do with this. Yet I look at our human vulnerabilities and our tendencies and I go, this is extremely dangerous because we have a lot of people who already are struggling to make sense of things and are already given over to their own personal biases and all of this. And now we have something that knowingly and willingly will only further convince you of what you want to know. And the reality is, I've said this over and over and over, AI will give you what you want. And I did some experiments with this to show this to someone the other day. The prompt you give it says a lot more than you even realize. And it's amazing how people don't even recognize their own personal biases in the prompts, but AI sees it. And so it can tell when you're asking it for something with a natural bias, and it will detect that bias and it will give you the answer it thinks you want. It will not say, hang on, your prompt seems a little biased. Let me actually strip that bias out by presenting an objective analysis of this with all these other things to actually get you to think critically. It's going to do what you want. And I think what we're seeing with Omni 1 is it's actually just going to do that even better and in more convincing ways. So my push to everyone is, please don't let AI do your thinking for you. Don't trust AI to do the critical analysis and critical thought that you need. Don't trust AI to root out biases and misinformation. You need to do that. You need to have a standard by which you measure things and actually come to decisions. And can AI be a great assistant in helping you get there? You bet. But you need to be more self-aware of your own bias and issues, because otherwise it's just going to accelerate or exacerbate it. So that's where I am with Omni 1. I'm going to continue kind of watching how it goes, what kind of tweaks they make. There's Omni 1, the major model. Then there's Mini, which again is less tokens, things like that. I haven't really seen that big of a difference, but again, I'm not using it for some of these advanced capabilities that it really was designed for. So curious the thoughts from others on that one. All right, transitioning over to social media. Big announcement, I think it was this week. Instagram came out and said they are now going to be rolling out for Instagram what are called teen settings. Okay, it's going to be a new layer of it's the next step in. I appreciate this, that social media is acknowledging whether they're doing it proactively or because the data is there and people are kind of outraged over it, but they're acknowledging, you know what, social media is actually harmful, especially to youth, extremely dangerous to youth. We're seeing that all over the place. The data is clear on this. So Meta and Instagram ultimately are saying, so we're going to do something about it, and we're going to create teen accounts for anyone under the age of 18. There are going to be additional restrictions. There's going to be things that you just cannot do on Instagram as a result of that. Now, at 16, some of this stuff loosens up, but basically under the age of 18, there is a teen account that, is highly restricted, as a first attempt of saying, let's try and make one of youth's most popular social media platforms a little safer for youth, which kudos to them. So some of the things that are coming with this are things like all accounts in this teen setting become private by default. Now, it says by default, so I'm guessing you can flip it to public. I'm thinking that might be one of the ones that you can change to 16 and older. Once you're 16, you can, I don't know. I'm not on Instagram. I don't know much about it. But so the settings and all of that, I haven't got around and played with it. But, by default, it becomes a private account. So, it cannot be publicly found, which I think is good because there's a lot of things that a lot of predatory stuff out there that kids probably just should be protected from. So kudos on that. Strangers. So people, they are not, I don't know if you're friends or follow, like I'm not an Instagram person, but whatever it is, random people you are not connected to, whatever that looks like, they can't DM you. So someone can't just reach out of the blue and say, hey, saw your post, like, here you go, want to chat type of a thing. There are no DMs to strangers. There is also a sleep mode that is enabled. So from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., it just basically is locked down saying, hey, they are adding parental controls so that parents can see who kids are messaging without seeing the contents of those messages. So still kind of respecting that privacy while also offering greater transparency. There are going to be kid, friendly topics or teen friendly topics. So it's going to restrict stuff so that, not everything that's on Instagram is accessible to teens. So I think it's a positive step. I think it's a good thing. I think I guarantee there are going to be teenagers who are outraged about it, who are going to, there's probably going to be parents who are outraged about this, who go, my kids are mad. And I don't support big tech throttling what my kids can do and whatever. And in some ways, I understand where that argument comes from. I do. It's not fun to have a tech company make rules about how you can use its platform. However, and I think this is the part that people forget, it's their platform and it's free for you. So you may not like it, but they do have the right to say, this is how we're choosing to govern our platform. We have made this decision. And that's not a fun thing to say. Like, I, for one, am not someone who likes to be told what to do. But I respect the fact it's like, hey, it's Meta's social media platform. It's Meta's thing, and they're giving it away. I mean, not really. They're taking your data for what, but never mind that. You get it, right? You're not paying anything, at least monetarily, to use the platform. And so if they say, we want to do this with the platform, to the people who go, they can't do that. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And so if you're somebody who gets really mad about the idea of Instagram taking a position on what they're going to do with their platform, I would actually encourage you to step back and go, listen, is this something you're paying for? Do you have the right to tell them how to do it? If it's, I mean, honestly, and you look at this, it's like, it's for the benefit of teens. It's for the good of our youth. Might be inconvenient, might make some people mad, but it is their platform. They do have the right to, and they're trying to do their best. So while it may be an inconvenience for you or may make your kids really mad, I would say maybe cool off a little bit. You can go build your own platform if you really want. You can use other ways if you want, but they don't have to bend to the fact that, well, you're inconveniencing me with your way of running your platform. And I know that might not be a popular opinion, but it's just the reality of they made it, they're giving it to you. Um, and in this instance, I can't see anything where I would go, well, this is discriminatory. This is violates some sort of human right. Not social media is a human. I mean, it's optional to even be on it. So that's where when people get really feisty about this stuff, I see some of the same things with TikTok where it's like, come on, it's their platform. Cool it. So I think it's a good step. Some of the things that even in conversations I've had already, and even I initially thought was like, I appreciate the step, but I mean, I was a kid. It's not going to be hard for kids to get around this. Hey, how old are you? Oh, I'm 18. Are you though? Check yes to confirm you're really 18. Yep, I'm 18. Um, so but I dug into it. Like, how are they going to validate this? Because that's, I think, people's initial reaction. Well, won't kids just lie and say they're 18? Type of a thing. And they're doing actually some pretty robust stuff with it to put in validation, video identification to try and validate. Like, you have to actually send a video that they can try and detect your age to see if it's accurate. Looking at your ID, providing ID to prove that you're over 18. Other users confirming and validating the age is some of the stuff in there. One of the things that I was a little like, but I guess they're doing it anyway, is actually AI sniffing. That's what I'm calling it. But essentially looking at the content of your social media and looking for inaccuracies of, if you say happy birthday, it's my birthday, and you've said you're 18, but everyone weirdly is messaging you and DMing you going, hey, can you believe you're 14? All of a sudden it flags it and goes, I think you lied to us about your age. You're not 18 years old. Now, how far they'll go with that, it doesn't get into all the terms of like, so what exactly are you looking at? And what are your data practices about that? Which is always a black box in these tech companies and makes me uncomfortable. But those are some of the ways to the folks out there going, I like this, but there's just no way they're going to be able to, police it. Well, they've actually got some pretty good ways to police it. The thing with it though is kids are going to get around it. I don't know if anybody else has, looked into some of the YouTube Kids stuff, but there's a lot of stuff on YouTube Kids that is not kid friendly and has actually been outed as like, this is not only not kid friendly, like this is predatory type stuff. So are there always going to be people breaking the rules? Are there always going to be people trying to go around it, doing whatever they can? Yeah, there are, which is why my advice to parents on this is, well, I think it's a great step, and I appreciate Meta taking the effort to say, hey, we are going to do what we can, which is we are going to put restrictions in place. We are going to put parental controls in place. We are going to put additional, ways of checking and balancing this to make sure any parent out there who's putting their trust in Meta to take care of their kids' well-being on social media, that's a mistake. And as a dad of 8, I will just say firsthand, if you as a parent are subjugating the responsibility of parenting your kids on social media and making sure that they're, being safe and stuff like that, like don't, no judgment, but I'm just telling you that is a mistake and it will not end well for you. So as a parent, if you have youth on Instagram, I personally have just made the choice, and we've discussed this with our kids openly, that they are not going to be on social media until they're at least in their late teens. It's just something that I've seen the destructive nature of it. I know what it's capable of. I want to protect my kids. Now, that's a personal decision. I'm not sitting here saying any parent who has their kids on social media is a bad parent. No, I think every family needs to weigh and evaluate that themselves. What I will say is, though, it is a foolish mistake to trust Meta to parent your kids' social media activity. That is, you as a parent have a responsibility to have a relationship with your kids, to understand, to have open dialogue, to do things like that. And to be clear, I'm not someone who's a big advocate for invading your kids' privacy, snooping, policing every single thing they do. What kind of trust does that build? And how does that set them up for success as an adult? So I'm not coming at this from a draconian, overlord of your kids' tech usage. No, I'm just saying you do need to be a parent and you need to have a responsibility to be involved in that. And Meta's not going to replace that. Okay, so that's Instagram, what's going on with teen settings and all that good stuff. Next up was an interesting one. I actually came across this last night when I was looking through one of my news apps. So there's this marketing professional out in North Carolina. No, he's not in North Carolina. That's the next story. Anyway, there's this marketing professional. He's obviously remaining anonymous for a lot of reasons. I get it. Sounds like a pretty senior person in a company who is in marketing. And so he was on an 8:30 p.m. call. And he's sitting in his, living room or whatever, and his daughter's there, and she needs to grab her device. And her daughter happens to reach over and lean and kind of look over his shoulder on the video call, and people saw it. That was it. That's all it was. She didn't disturb things. It wasn't a big ordeal. She wasn't dancing and, throwing things in the background. Just grabbed something kind of like it was obvious she was there and then made her way off. I'm confident that now, of course, that's his recollection of it. Okay. I don't know. I wasn't on the call, so I'm not going to say that's exactly how it was, but that's his recollection of it. That Friday, he gets a call from HR, and HR has a conversation with him saying that the CEO was extremely displeased by the disruption of his daughter and that they would like it if he would start working from a WeWork instead of working from home. So kind of almost this like, hey, this happened, and unfortunately now we're going to need you to work from WeWork, no longer being remote. He declined. And his story went to Reddit. People have been all over the place on this. So I thought I'd weigh in on it because people who know me know my thoughts on remote work and all this stuff. But I'm going to give, like I always do, a bit of a balanced perspective to this. Here's the thing. My initial reaction when I first read it, initial reaction was outrage, which the title is exactly designed for that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy, 8:30 p.m. meeting, his daughter comes in, innocently grabs an iPad, and his company has a meeting with him and says you need to work at WeWork. This is just tragedy and oppression and blah, 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 blah. Like, that was my initial reaction, if I'm being completely honest. This is why I don't record these when I first read the headlines, because I take time to process, think, look into it, and then just kind of objectively analyze it. I'm going to start by taking the company's position and just say, hey, here's some things to consider. Okay. The 8:30 p.m. thing sounds outrageous, and I think a lot of people were reacting to that. And it very well may be ridiculous to expect this. That said, I don't know what company it's at. And having run global organizations before, if you've ever worked in a global organization, there's no good time to have a meeting with California, New York, London, and Singapore. Like, there's not. So you're going to have meetings at weird times. So we kind of have to potentially dismiss the 8:30 p.m. thing unless we really know that this was just suits style working conditions where it's like you're just working 18 hours a day. It is very possible that an 8:30 meeting might be totally normal. I have lots of friends overseas where their day doesn't start till the mid-afternoon and they work into the late hours. Like, that's just their day. So that kind of, again, I don't want to overreact to the time. It could be really like, hey, what are you doing? But not knowing. I also respect the fact that while, of course, to the dad, it may seem like my kid didn't do anything. They just simply quietly reached over, grabbed the iPad, and did nothing else. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe their kid was more of a distraction than need be. I also don't know the nature of the meeting. I don't know the nature of it. Was this a meeting with clients? Was this a big executive presentation? Was this just a regular team meeting or a presentation? Was it an internal meeting? I don't know. And not having that information matters, because I can tell you, I have a standing rule. No apologies for personal interruptions ever. And so even if it was a super important meeting and something happened where there was a personal interruption, I personally would say, no sweat. Like, let's not get hung up about that. That said, I recognize, and even my kids know, there are certain times where it's totally fine to open daddy's door and come in and do things. And there's certain times where it's like, not now. this isn't the kind of meeting that you can just come in and interrupt. Now, if there's an emergency or if there's something like that, or my kid quietly walked through the background and walked back out, I wouldn't think twice about it. And I would be super upset if somebody made a big deal out of something as innocent as that. So if it truly was as innocent as he said, I don't care the nature of the meeting. If truly all she did was reach and grab her iPad, look, and then go off camera, nobody heard her, nothing, then this is completely ridiculous. If it's bigger than that, then I could see having a conversation with him and saying, hey, let's talk about what happened. But let's not talk about, oh, your kid can't be in meeting, you need to go to WeWork. Let's just discuss the nature of what happened. And if it truly was an instance where this was very disruptive or inappropriate, maybe we just have a conversation of why, how we can talk, work through it and whatever. We treat each other like adults. But I kind of calmed down and went, well, I don't know enough about it to have the kind of reaction I did. Now, here's where that's me trying to be objective. Here's my real feelings on this, because I've been in too many organizations and I know where some of this nonsense comes from. Okay. An 8:30 p.m. meeting, unless it's a rarity or that is your norm because of the working condition, is ridiculous. Life is way too short. Work is not that important. And actually, even his own reflections and reading more about it is, he's kind of going, you know what am I doing working at 8:30 when my daughter's right here? I should be spending time with her. And instead, I'm sitting on a meeting getting in trouble because she happened to come grab her tablet. Yeah, I agree. Good for you if that really is. And I would encourage that from anybody. If you're feeling like your work is your life, check your priorities. To the CEO, if you really got bent over a kid quietly reaching in and grabbing an iPad, I'm guessing either you don't have kids or your priorities are way out of whack. Again, lighten up. Life is too short. I still think of that whatever European news situation where the dad is being interviewed and his kids and his wife, it was hilarious. And it was hilarious because he was trying to pretend it wasn't happening, versus had he taken 10 seconds and gone, oh, excuse me, 1 second. Hey, sweetie, here, come here. Let me take you out. Which everybody would have thought, oh, that's adorable. I think sometimes we take ourselves way too seriously, especially in the corporate sphere. We're all human beings. We all have families. We all put our pant legs on one leg at a time. Work is not that serious. And so if this truly was a situation where the company got bent out of shape over something that, then dude, go find a new job that you don't need to be working there. And if you're a company that operates that way, you're not going to attract great talent. I'll tell you that right now. So that's kind of both ends of it. But I think it's important to reflect on both sides of it, because I have been and had to have conversations with people. I'm ridiculously flexible and I'm all about, hey, outcomes versus activity. Who cares? And if you've been on my team, there are times when I've had to have conversations. People have known I've had to have conversations where I've said, listen, here's the thing. I love that we have a flexible work environment. I love that I'm able to offer that for you. However, here's an observable behavior and pattern that I'm starting to pick up that I believe is distracting you from your work and is preventing you from being able to achieve XYZ outcome. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about, are there things we can do to help? Do we need to adjust hours? And a perfect example of this, I'm not going to mention who or what company, a person needed more flexibility because of the timing of childcare and when they needed to do things. And what was happening was they were constantly joining meetings on the phone, kind of coming in and off camera while they're driving, taking their kids to school. It was a mess and it was very distracting. And it was an issue because of how it was affecting performance. But we had an honest conversation about it. I got to know her situation, understood, okay, here's exactly what's going on. Here's what you need to accommodate that. How about we do this? What if we adjust these things and let's just make sure, let's move meetings and let's make sure meetings are not happening at these times. Does that work? Problem solved. I didn't need to tell her you can no longer work for the company, or you need to go get a WeWork, or I demand that you come into the office now because of your issue. We talked about it like adults. We worked through it and it was all fine. So it's possible, folks. It's possible to work through these things without having to resort to childish antics like HR showing up and saying, we need to talk about your working environment. You need to go to WeWork. Come on. That's ridiculous. Okay, moving on. So this one, I had mixed feelings about this one, if I'm being completely honest. So I came across this. There's a gentleman. He's a musician, Michael Smith, 52 years old, out in North Carolina. Career in music, all this stuff. And he made $10 million with AI. And you might go, whoa, what? Like, what did he do? So he used AI and his music industry and music knowledge, the industry knowledge and his knowledge of creating music. And he used AI to make a bunch of fake bands. He used AI to make a bunch of fake songs that he then hosted on all of the streaming services. And then he used AI to make a bunch of fake people that listened to these fake bands, fake songs. So much so, he did it to the tune of $10 million from royalties. Well, and let's just say the music industry did not respond well to this when he got caught. In fact, there's a whole bunch of charges and he faces up to 20 years per charge. Now, I laugh a little bit when I think about this because for those of you who know me, you may know of a story of mine from my late teen years where I was involved in some international mail stuff of merchandise that ended up getting me in some very hot water with federal agents. I'll just say that. Needless to say, nothing ended up coming of it. I completely said I truly had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't. And needless to say, the federal agents realized real quick when I got caught. I was like, wait, what? I'm not supposed to do this. So part of me, my heart kind of goes out to him because I'm kind of like, I mean, you came up with an idea, you found a way to play the system, you did it to the tune of $10 million. Okay. But then as I dug into it a little bit more, I started to go, I don't know that this is just kind of this innocent, like, hey, I had this brilliant idea. I didn't know that this was there was a lot of kind of nefarious, like, hey, I know this is fraudulent. I know this technically violates the terms. I know what I'm doing here. And yet I'm choosing to do it. And I'm bringing a bunch of people in to pull this off. And his response is definitely not repentant by any way. Like, he's quoted as saying, this is insane and wrong and crazy. There is no fraud here whatsoever. How do I appeal this? So I look at his response and then the way he got into it, and I have a little bit more of a, you kind of deserve to get the hammer thrown at you a little bit. Now, 20 years for each charge. She's Louise. Maybe not all those would stick. That's a pretty hard lesson to learn if you did this. But it does bring up some of the ethics of this whole thing. I mean, he made real bands. Well, they're not real. I mean, what's real when we talk about AI? Like, there's no people. There are no people in these bands. The music they're making is purely AI generated, and I haven't listened to any of them, so I don't even know if they're real songs. And the people, there are no people listening to it. So it's purely like a shell game of fake bands making fake music, passing it on to fake users. And you're basically, I think of that thing where you got the three little things with a ball underneath and you're moving them around, but the ball's actually not there. You're just making it look like it, but you're making a ton of money off the whole thing. So I understand where the music industry and people are going, hey, this is a complete violation of this. Like, this violates the purpose of, like, we create music, people create music for the purpose of people, and we pay based on people choosing to listen to it and the popularity of the song based on people's input. You completely scam the system by doing this. So in that sense, while my initial reaction was kind of like chuckle, like, hey, well, who's really getting harmed here? Part of me is like, well, actually, no, the more I dig into it, this was a very intentional, knowing manipulation and abuse of the system that is costing someone real money, which will have an effect on people. Because imagine if everybody started doing this and the music industry is going, we're paying a bunch of money to, and it's not even real. Like, so I get where it does have implications. Now, granted, I know there's going to be the folks who support Michael on this and go, what, big music, big money, he's just Robin Hood taking from the rich to feed the poor, type. He's not. He's scamming the system for his own gain is what he's doing. But it was entertaining to me watching this, one, based on some of my own personal experiences with some of this stuff, and realizing even if you think you're not breaking the law, because in your head it makes perfect sense, there are real consequences to this. So that is one warning that I have to people who listen to this, is that you might have this really brilliant idea where you go, hey, if I use AI this way, I can actually kind of skirt the rules, bend them a bit to my own advantage, and possibly never get caught. And obviously, he went for a while, $10 million in royalties. That doesn't happen overnight. And so I actually would be really curious how he got caught. I wasn't able to find any of that. But I mean, it's a warning to people, because if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And so if you think, hey, I figured out a way to game the system and make a bunch of money doing absolutely nothing, it will catch up with you at some point. And I learned that lesson the hard way myself, very young. And the problem is, too, if you're the first one to get caught, let's just say the system oftentimes has a way of making an example out of you to make sure nobody else wants to follow in your footsteps. Now, like I said, I was very fortunate. I think how I responded, and just based on my worldview, I think God kind of truly protected me from what could have ended up being really, really, really bad. But I think it was a mix of him watching out for me, a mix of my repentance of, like, I really didn't know what I was doing was. I mean, I kind of thought maybe it could, but I was 17 years old, 18. I really had no idea. And so, but I mean, as I was sitting in an interrogation room being grilled by federal agents on this, like, this is not fun. And you think you'll get away with it until you don't. And then when you don't, it's not fun. So I think this is something we're going to see a lot more of in the AI age, where people are going to go, hey, what? I can do this. It seems great. It's free. It doesn't cost me anything. I can totally scam the system. Nobody's getting hurt, which I'm sure that would be an argument. What? Fake bands, fake music, fake listeners? Like, who's getting harmed here? This seems like an innocent thing. That's not a good standard to use when you're deciding whether you should do something or not. So just a warning to folks who may have a brilliant AI idea, so that, hey, I can work or not have to work and still make a boatload of money. It'll come back. All right. On another positive note, in terms of innovation, this one blew my mind. So there was a kid. I don't know, kid. He's in college. Hudaifa Nazardine. I had to write it down because I'm like, I'm not going to remember it. He's a math student, so it doesn't surprise me. Math major out at University of Waterloo, and this is insane. Like, I'm not kidding you. This is your hair. If you have hair, it's gonna blow it back. He built a homemade fusion reactor, a homemade fusion reactor for $2,000 and zero experience manufacturing fusion reactor. I mean, how many people on the planet have experienced manufacturing fusion reactors? So this isn't like, oh, wow, he didn't. So many people do. Like, nobody has experience in this. And he built a fusion reactor in his dorm or at home. I didn't get the full scope of, like, the physical location where he built it, but he built it with just parts he bought off Amazon for $2,000, and it works. I mean, this is insane. So I dug into it because I was like, how does one with zero experience in fusion, clearly a very intelligent person, great knowledge of math, science, I'm guessing, extremely left-brained, I'm assume. I don't want to put my own assumptions on this. But clearly someone who's extremely intelligent. But when they interviewed him and dug into it, he did it with $2,000 worth of parts he ordered off Amazon and Anthropic Cloud. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And there's a little video of the thing actually working. It is creating plasma, and it's and you like read his interviews, like the hardest part was building the vacuum to contain the whole thing. You're like, yeah, I know. I've researched fusion. It's not exactly an easy thing to pull off, and scientists and engineers have been working on this for quite some time. So this was a huge development in the whole concept of clean energy and how we may be able to do this. And I mean, if a college kid can do it in his dorm room for $2,000, come on, you're telling me we can't make progress on this? So I say this as a very positive thing, because when I hear people get up in arms about AI, like I've said over and over and over, AI itself doesn't do anything. And I know I've been misquoted before. I've had people go, well, you said AI does. No. My position on this is all AI is doing is taking something at some point someone did, and it's doing what you're asking to do with it. It in and of itself is not doing anything autonomously. But what I love about this story is it shows that when you pair the power of artificial intelligence with the creativity and innovation of a human being, and you forge those two things together, this can be what you get: a $2,000 fusion reaction that sits on your desk and doesn't blow up your house. I mean, it's insane. That is absolutely insane. And it's this kind of stuff that makes me go, I am so excited about where we're headed in the future. I am so excited what this technology has to offer. Should we choose to use it wisely? Now, I know there are people, and even my post reaction to this was, if a 20-year-old college student can build a $2,000 fusion reactor that sits on their desk, imagine what a 20-year-old student with $2,000 could also build that wouldn't be for the purposes of creating clean energy. And I think that can be a little terrifying. That's the humbling part of this, and why we have to hold artificial intelligence so delicately, and why we have to think so critically about where we're going and what we're doing and the implications of the decisions we're making, and how are we safeguarding things. And going back to the Instagram, we might not like when there are rules and boundaries placed around us where someone somewhere goes, this is not safe. And so we do have to protect it. And I get there would be people that would say, no rules to anyone. But the research is clear, is people perform better with rules. And when you think about something like this, what if the news story wasn't he built a $2,000 fusion reactor, but instead he built a $2,000 fusion bomb and leveled one of the cities that was near you? Would you have the same positive reaction? And that's the scary part about it. And I don't say that to freak people out. I don't say that to send people into a panic, because like I said, I can get super animated and excited about how incredibly innovative and exciting it is that someone built a working fusion reactor for $2,000 with zero experience using AI. That's incredible. And that's wonderful. And that's so hopeful for some of the biggest problems we have facing us ahead, energy being one of them. That's incredible. But we have to hold that intention with what the opposite of that is. And I think that's why it's so important that not only do we set boundaries, we have guardrails around things, but that every one of us is looking in the mirror and saying, hey, how do we make sure that we're not starting to adopt the mindset of, well, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And it's okay if some people get hurt if ultimately it benefits others, because that's the kind of thinking that can lead to things like this going completely sideways. So I don't want to end on a heavy note, because kid built a fusion reactor for $2,000. That's incredible. And I am excited to see where that goes and what it means for energy production, for the globe and humanity, and democratization of this kind of stuff. Like, I just think about what he built and I go, imagine you're in a country where stable power is something that is completely inaccessible to you. You don't even have access to this. And if someone could create something like that, that created unlimited energy, that just sat like on your desk. I mean, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible and extremely encouraging for the future ahead. And the fact that that kind of innovation is democratized is awesome. So, with that, I hope you're excited and inspired while holding that intention with uh, humility and a little bit of terror for what's ahead. But with that, I hope you have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, and we will see you on the other side.